Hola, bueno, hoy estoy aquí con dos mujeres a las que tenía muchísimas ganas de entrevistar, que son las protagonistas de la portada de mi libro, El Método Laxmi, 9 claves para un parto sin dolor. Son la fotógrafa y la madre de esta imagen alucinante de este momento increíble. Bueno, su cara dice tantas cosas, sé que es una fotografía que no deja a la gente, bueno, así indiferente, ha tenido muchas reacciones, la mayoría muy buenas, pero por ejemplo hemos tenido un problema y es que en México la editorial Urano de México no lo quiere publicar así y me exige cambiar la portada. Y bueno, yo no estoy nada de acuerdo. Además, dicen que no refleja la felicidad, la tranquilidad de un parto real, cuando es absolutamente, esto no puede ser más real que esto. Y creo que a nivel fotográfico es como, wow, poder captar el momento exacto de, bueno, de esa expresión, ¿no?, en su cara y de agarrar a su bebé por primera vez, ¿no?, de este primer encuentro, es una hazaña casi. y, y como madre me encantaría saber qué es lo que estaba sintiendo Angelique, que es la protagonista, la mamá, eh, en ese momento. Es que de verdad que la miro y me... ¡Wow! Es preciosa. Así que voy a presentarlas. ¡Tadán! Here they are. Bueno, la entrevista va a ser en inglés. Espero poderla subtitular. They are Angelique, the mother, and Leslie Lowe, the photographer. They are both photographers, and they both dedicate themselves to take pictures in births. So they have, I guess, they have a lot of knowledge about what a birth is. We can talk about that. And I want them to tell us how was this experience as a mother, as a friend, because they are friends too. I think we live in the same neighborhood or something like that.
Yeah.
So they are friends. And who wants to start to tell the story about this beautiful birth?
Well, I can share my experience, and then I'm sure Leslie will have things to add as well. So for me, this was my third time giving birth, my third son, and all of my babies have been born at home. So I've had the experience of giving birth in my own environment, in my own space. But this was my first birth since becoming a birth photographer. And I think that greatly impacted the way that I went into this birth compared with the others. I had the opportunity prior to this to watch many women giving birth. And I had a lot of time to think, and even while I was pregnant, you know, I was photographing births through my pregnancy. And every time I was at a birth, I was thinking in the back of my mind about my birth and what I wanted. And this is the first time in my birth, I think, I placed a lot of importance on my vision for my birth and already seeing the birth I wanted in my mind, and really thinking through what that would look like for me. And I know with birth, you go into it a bit open-handed because things can change, but it helps me a lot to visualize where I wanted to give birth, what position I wanted to give birth, who I wanted to be there, and really lean into my intuition for what made me feel safe and supported. because in my previous births, I had learned from my experience, and then from also watching other women, things that benefit your birth experience and things that can distract from that experience. So for me, this time, I decided that I wanted to have the experience of giving birth out of the water. My first two boys were born in the water, in a birth pool. And I was a bit afraid to give birth out of the water because, they call the water the midwife's epidural, because it helps with comfort. And I wanted to know, I think that I wanted to prove to myself that, I give birth naturally already, and I don't need a birth pool to allow me to give birth. And I wanted to prove to myself that it doesn't feel very different. But I just had not had that experience. And so I wanted to challenge myself and to have that experience in my life that, like, I have given birth in water and I've given birth not in water, and both are empowering. And so I decided I wanted to give birth out of the water. And also from a photographer standpoint, I know that it was important to me to hire somebody to document the experience. And I knew giving birth out of the water, you can more clearly see the way that your baby is born. And I really wanted to see that experience this time, being so much more familiar with birth now than I had been before when I had given birth. And it was really cool because he actually was born with a nuchal hand. So his hand was up at his chin when he was born. And I got to see that because Leslie captured a beautiful shot of him with his hand up at his chin and me with my hand holding him. And that was a really, really special to see the way he was born so clearly. So for me, I made sure to select a birth team, even within home birth and midwives and midwifery care. There are, I think, levels of midwives. Some will let you have more control over your birth, and some will have some rules that they want you to follow or some restrictions. And I found the midwife here that I felt would let me do everything I wanted. And I told her I want to catch my own baby. I wanted that experience as well. I want to birth out of the water and I want to catch my baby myself. In my previous births, the midwife caught the baby the first time, and the second birth, my husband caught the baby. So this time I wanted to know what that felt like to do that myself. And she was wonderful about that. She just sat. She wasn't even close to me, really. She just sat off to the side and she just sat and watched and waited as I was giving birth. And she did no cervical checks with me. She really left me to birth undisturbed completely the way I wanted. And right before the moment he was born, I had a very spiritual experience right before that moment of pushing. So this baby for us was an unexpected baby. We wanted to have more children, but the timing was quite close together with the one before. And I was through the pregnancy feeling just not ready yet to give birth, not ready to care for a newborn again. And I think my pregnancy was I was in denial, I think, a lot in my pregnancy preparing for this baby. And so I never at that point felt I had chosen to have this experience. I didn't choose this baby. I didn't choose to give birth now. I felt nervous. But in my birth, I felt very supported. I felt very safe. I felt very at peace in my home. Everything was set the way I wanted, and everything went the way that I had envisioned. And so when it came time to push, that was the first moment in my labor I started to feel a little bit afraid, because with my first son pushing, I had a very difficult time pushing. And with my second son, I had the fetal ejection reflex where he just came out before I even realized he was being born. So this time I knew I would probably have to push again. And it was the only moment I was a little afraid of, because it's the most intense moment of birth. And up until then, everything, I can do the contractions well. I know how to work with my body. I know how to relax my body. And I was very well supported. But when it came to pushing, I could feel it was time to push, and that I could push. But I actually chose to wait for some time. From the first sensation I felt to push, I decided to wait because I was a bit afraid and I didn't feel ready to commit to pushing. So I had a few contractions happen, and each time the people in the room, I think, could sense that I could have the baby, and everyone was thinking, was this the moment? And I would let the contraction pass because I just was trying to build up my courage, I think, a bit. But in that moment where I was feeling afraid, I thought I remembered that I had wanted to have some time worshiping God in my labor. And I was at the end of my labor and I hadn't worshiped God. And I wanted that to be a part of the experience. So I thought, okay, well, I will do it right now. And so I asked for some worship music to come on. And I just was on my knees and I had my hands up and I just started to worship God and really put my mind on him. And it was like this very beautiful moment where the sensations in my body didn't matter anymore. Like they faded away because my focus was set on, it felt like God had given me himself as a focal point and was like, look at me, Angelique, keep your eyes on me. I am right here. All of this doesn't matter. Focus on me and let those feelings fade away. And I was so wrapped up in worshiping God. And I had a song on repeat that was had some scripture in it. That was what we named our son after. And we named him Banner. And the name Banner, it comes from a verse in Song of Solomon talking about, it says, his banner over me is love. And in that moment, the song was playing and I had this overwhelming sense of God's love for this baby and his life and his purpose, and an overwhelming sense of God's love for me in this moment. And that this pregnancy, this birth, this wasn't a punishment. This wasn't something to be afraid of. These sensations, they were not a punishment from God. They were a gift. All of this was a gift because his love for us was so overwhelming that he wanted to give me this person to be in my life and me to him to be his mother. And the clarity in that moment of what was about to happen. I was about to meet my son. I was about to open this gift from God. And the intensity of that moment was not a punishment. It was a gift. It was the moment I meet him. And it's the first time in my labor that I've been able to think that much before the baby was born, like in the labor, be able to think and focus on that baby so much and meeting that baby so much and visualize meeting that baby so much. My first labor was so intense that I couldn't think past every contraction. I couldn't even imagine that there was a baby at the end. And so when a midwife caught my baby and just put him on my chest, it was a shock to me. But in this birth, I felt like God gave me this moment. So these contractions are coming and going, and any of them I could have pushed the baby, but I was still having this experience with God. And I felt like he gave me the opportunity in that moment to choose to have this baby, to choose the moment he was born, and to choose like in as his mother. And because I had asked God, please God, can you make the fetal ejection reflex happen again? Because that was wonderful last time. And I don't want to push, I'm scared, I don't want to do it. And I felt like he said, no, I want you to choose the moment. I want you to choose your baby. And so finally I thought, okay, all right, I'll do it. This next contraction, like I will have my baby. And the next contraction, I pushed and he came out in one push. And I caught him. I reached my hand down and caught his head. And so the picture that Leslie caught is his hand on his chin and my hand on his head of me catching him. And I had made for myself a little, like a little nest to give birth on. Because when I visualized my birth, I think it was hard for me to imagine just like standing on the floor or somewhere hard. I wanted like a spot that felt safe to me. Like the birth pool had been a spot to give birth. So if I was going to give birth out of the water, I wanted a spot as well. And so I had like a cushion with a waterproof cover and a sheet. And so I landed on there and I scooped him up to my chest. And that's when Leslie got this shot, was the first moment after I had birthed him, and I picked him up to my chest and I did it. And that was the moment. And she ran around front and snapped this picture. And my older son was there as well in the room. It was the middle of the night and we had woken him up to be there. And he was right there as well to meet his brother. And he had also been there for his other brother being born. So it was very special. He was, after me, he was the next person to touch his brother.
Well, Angelique, I was holding my breath when you were telling all the details. What a beautiful experience. Thank you so much for sharing it with us. I think it is very helpful for other women to have this other side to what a birth is. And thank you so much. And now that beautiful shot of that amazing moment is gonna be on many shelves for many women to know that birth can be this ecstatic experience, with this connection to God and to your own baby. It's so beautiful. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And I will say my reaction to meeting my child was different as well this time than in my other births. Because I had already had a visualized meeting him, when I saw him, it was like a reunion, it was a really beautiful moment. And because of the birth team that I had gathered, they just let me sit there for as long as I wanted with my baby, looking at him, meeting him, talking to him, and having his brother meet him too. And nobody rushed to do anything. They let me sit there for so long, and I see birth and I see home birth as well. That's the type of birth photography I specialize in. And even within that, I know that I got to sit there a very long time, just enjoying that moment until I felt completely finished, ready to move forward. And then they moved me to the bed and started, to take care of us. But it was just a very uninterrupted, it felt very empowering to me to have a birth team that allowed me all of the control of my birth. And it felt truly like it was my birth my baby, my body. I was not following anyone else's rules, but they were just there to support my own vision already. So it was very special.
It is very special and very important, the people who are in this labor work. And tell us, why did you choose Leslie to be the photographer of your birth? And then we'll introduce her to tell her own story about this birth.
Absolutely. So Leslie and I have gotten to know each other through doing birth photography, which is really unique and cool. Our area here, there's a beautiful birth community for home birth. And with the pandemic, as birth photographers, we have not been able to really go in the hospital as much. So mostly we've been doing home births, and it's so important in birth photography to have somebody you can rely on and trust to back you up, because if you have two moms that go into labor at the same time, and you need to have someone you can trust to be at the other birth for you in your place. And so it has to be somebody who, you know, you can depend on and whose work you admire and things like that. So we had already built up a relationship in that way and a friendship throughout, actually while Leslie was pregnant with her baby. And yeah, so it was really, really special. And then, you know, getting to ask her to also come and be in the birth space as a friend. You know, everybody who was at my birth was somebody I felt close to or was a friend of mine. So it was even, you know, even the midwife, everybody was somebody I had worked with at a birth, or I had a friend who I had traveled the world with before I was married, and she was there as well. And everybody was a friend, but also had a purpose. And Leslie fit into that really nicely.
Okay, so Leslie, please let us know about you, and also about how did you live this experience with your friend Angelique, and how did you get that shot? Oh, Leslie, please turn on the microphone.
Sorry.
I
had it off because my son was talking very loudly in his room.
Don't worry, really don't worry about that. If you need to go and I will edit afterwards, don't worry about that.
Okay.
We are mothers, and that makes part of our lives.
Perfect. So I have been photographing births for about 14 years now, actually almost 15 years in August. And I have always loved photography. I've always loved specifically just capturing life, normal life. I mean, the first photo I ever took is sitting on my refrigerator. I remember very clearly, I was 3 years old. I asked my parents if I could take their camera and take a picture of them sitting on my bed. And I have that picture on my fridge. And so from as early as I can remember, documenting just normal life has been really important to me. So when I started photography, I started with weddings and couples, and that isn't something, it's not something that I'm passionate about. It was a way that I started, and it was a way that I got into the field, and I enjoy photographing connection, but I didn't feel like it was the perfect fit for me. So actually, when I was 17, my mom found out she was pregnant again, unexpectedly, with my fourth sister. So there's 5 girls in my family. So I was, again, 17 years old. She found out she was having another baby. She asked if I would be in the room to take pictures, because again, I'd been taking pictures of my family, you know, for my whole life. So I was very against it. I said, no, I don't want to be in that space with you. That just feels weird. And so I really pushed against doing that. But in the end, she she won me over. She said, yes, I really want it. And I agreed to be in the space and take photos. And after that event, just photographing the whole birth and being there and seeing birth for the first time, even though it was a hospital birth with an epidural, it just changed everything for me. It shifted how I wanted to photograph. So even though I was only 17, it just kind of stuck in my brain as this is where I want to go one day. And of course, at that time, that wasn't something that anybody did. Nobody professionally offered photos of birth. So I stayed with weddings and couples and did that for several years. And then in 2013, I discovered a photography company in Texas that was offering photos of births professionally. And that was the first time I had ever seen that. And I realized that's an option that I can offer. So I quickly stopped doing weddings, stopped doing photos for families, and just over everything, I just took everything else off the table and said, I'm reopening as just birth. And so in that time, that year, I shot many, many births. And then, but also during that year, my husband and I decided to move to Amsterdam. So in that move, I did end up losing a lot of momentum that I had gained in my business. And then when we moved, I also became pregnant with my first son. So the circumstances being what they were, I took time off of shooting altogether, of shooting anything, just trying to acclimate to being a mother, trying to acclimate to being in a new country. And so during those 3 years, I only shot a couple of births. I shot like 2 or 3 births. And then when we moved back to the United States, we're in South Carolina now. This is where I grew up. And in 2019, we had already had my second son, and my husband and I decided now is a good time to restart, just open back up and make this business like a reality again for us. So in 2019, I reopened, and I again just focused 100% on births. So that's kind of where my business, my current business, the trajectory has come from. With Angelique, we met in, I guess it was 2020. Was it 2020 that we met? Somewhere in there.
Yes, I think so.
No, I can't remember. I can't remember if it was before I was pregnant or not.
No, you were pregnant. You were pregnant when we met.
Was I pregnant? Oh, okay. Okay. So it was 21. So I met Angelique when I was pregnant with my third. And I think I connected with her because I saw her work, and I saw she was wanting to be a photographer, a birth photographer here in Greenville. They had recently moved into the area. And so I thought, I really like her work. Her style is different from others that are here in the area, and I connect a lot with her style. And so I'd love to chat with her and just hear her story and see what her thoughts are, where she's wanting to go with her business. So we went out to dinner, and we just instantly connected, and I feel like we're very similar in a lot of ways, and we have a very similar.
We are very similar.
We
talked about that before. It's our husbands actually have bonded over the fact that they said we're kind of married to the same person.
Yes. Yeah, and our husbands are a lot alike, which is funny too. Our husbands are very similar in the way that they father and our parents, and they're very connected to their families, and it's funny. But we have a very similar background with photography and with the art world, and so we come into birth photography in a very similar way, and we're in the birth space in a similar way, although we do have our unique perspectives of it. So it's been interesting to be able to connect with her through all of that. And when I was pregnant, I asked Angelique to come and do my maternity photos, and I had already hired another birth photographer, but I did want Angelique to come and do my maternity pictures and then my newborn pictures after my son was born. So we were able to kind of do those for each other as well. And then with Angelique being able to be there for her birth, it was so great. It was such an honor to be there, and it was also just so exciting to be there, like as her friend. And it's always different when you can do what you love for someone that you care about, that you're already connected to. It's not just a client. It's like there's already an investment there in the relationship. So it's always different and more special to shoot in that kind of an environment. So how do you want me to tell you about the birth now, about my perspective of her birth?
Yes, please. How was it?
Okay.
How did you leave it?
Okay. Yes. So, so when Angelique let us know that she was ready to give birth, with the third birth, we all are much more on alert because they can go much quicker. And so when she let us know, it was really exciting, and we were all, okay, let's go. Let's get there very quickly. We don't want to miss it. We don't want to be too late. And so when we got there, we could tell she was really in active labor. She was kind of really in the middle of riding through contractions, but she was really happy and she was really talkative. And so we kept the birth team, we would talk and we would laugh and we would have conversations, and it felt like a party almost. Like we all had like food and we were just hanging out in her kitchen, and then we would go in her bedroom, and she would have contractions, and it would be very quiet and very like calm until she could work through it. And then she would come out of a contraction and then just start talking. And so at one point we all thought maybe it would be helpful if we moved away so that she could really focus and really kind of settle into a rhythm with her contractions. Because sometimes in birth, moms, and I don't think Angelique, we didn't feel like a fear from her. We just felt a desire to hang out and be together. But in other birth situations, sometimes moms have fear and they want their team around, but it's actually preventing their progress. They kind of need to be able to focus and zone in. And so we thought maybe things would go quicker if we moved away. And so we would move out of the space, and we could hear the contractions becoming more and more intense when we would leave. But then Angelique would follow us to our next location and keep having contractions wherever we were. So we would move into the kitchen, and she would slowly come into the kitchen through contractions, and then we would talk more. But it was just so fun.
Can I say something really quick?
Yeah, yeah.
One of the reasons that I became a birth photographer was because of that feeling surrounding birth, especially after the baby was born and the room is full of oxytocin and there's a group of women and you're laughing and it's such a relief, like we did it, it's here. And it feels like such a beautiful, supportive space. And I so enjoy that element of birth. And that's why I wanted to be a part of it to become a birth photographer. How can I get in that room without being the one always giving birth, because I can only have so many kids. And so I think for my birth, especially because I so carefully selected the group of women that were there to support me, it was so fun to have people I really cared about all together and meeting each other or seeing each other again. And it was just like, I wanted to hang out with them. And I felt like I had control over, like when they were around and I wanted to chat, I could like tone down my contractions. And then when we stepped away and I was like, okay, we get serious, then it would be really strong. But I also didn't want to miss out on the part I really liked of giving birth. I want to enjoy this.
You wanted to be in the party.
I want to be here too. Yeah, exactly. So I felt like a great level of control in this birth, and when I could like turn it down or turn it up if I wanted to. So yeah, anyways, go ahead, Leslie. Sorry.
Wow,
yeah, no,
very interesting, because most people think that birth is something that takes you and you cannot do anything to control anything at all. And that's the proof.
It's from my experiences, like each birth I gain more understanding of birth and myself and my body, and also in watching other women give birth. And I can tell you that most of birth is in your mind. Most of it is mental and emotional. And if you are giving the signals to your body that it is safe, you're ready, open up. Your body follows suit with your mind, because your mind is sending the hormones to your body to say, like, everything is good. We are in the clear. You don't have to like tense up and tighten up, because you're safe, you're supported. And that is the thing I've really learned is it is all mental work. And so if you feel happy and supported, it's very easy to give birth.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's true. And I think that I've discovered that, yeah, with my own births as well. Just the difference between feeling that fear and feeling unprepared versus feeling totally prepared, having done all the work and going into it knowing that you have released all fear and even all control, but that there is no fear in that release, and that you can just rest and be peaceful and know that you're safe. There is a total difference between those two labors of feeling out of control and fearful, and feeling in control and without fear. It's a very different experience. But with Angelique's birth, we really up until I think we realized that it was not helpful for us to move into a different room. We would just stay with you. And we ended up having, it was so fun. It was so funny. We were telling stories, and Angelique was telling us stories between contractions about different experiences that she had, and we were laughing. It was a very joyful, like happy, it really felt like a party in the most like fun, easy, relaxing way. And then really the shift happened. We could tell when I think it was when you started feeling pushed, like you needed to push, because you
After
changed.
my water broke.
Yeah, after your water broke. That's right. Yes. So, and that everything kind of changed at that point. And I think, I'm not sure if that was like transition plus pushing reflex, that feeling of being pushy for you, or if that was just solely just feeling like he was ready to be pushed out. But we could tell a definite shift. And I don't remember the timeline, like the exact amount of time that was, but you moved over to that kind of that soft area that you had prepared. And so when I'm taking photos of a birth, my mind is working very quickly and assessing all the light and all the people and where the people are and where the mom is and the positions that she's choosing to get into. And as I'm reading the room and reading the mom, we can kind of tell, like, all right, baby is coming. Like, all right, where do I need to be? And so in my mind, I'm constantly thinking through, like, where do I need to be to get the picture that I want to get? And I'm already kind of thinking through the end picture that I want. So while the mom is getting ready to push or pushing or in transition, I'm practicing. I'm putting the light where I want it to be with my flash. I'm turning the flash off and practicing without it. I'm doing different things to make sure that I can get the moment I'm wanting to get. So when she was riding those contractions that she could have pushed, we were all ready because we knew once she decided to push, the baby would be born. It was very clear that he was ready to be born. So every time she didn't push, it was another opportunity for me to make sure that I was in the right place and I was going to be ready. So I had already thought through, he's going to be born. I think it will be very quick. And so when he comes out, she was on hands and knees. So I was behind her so that I could capture. We had already actually talked that she had envisioned herself being on hands and knees giving birth. And so she specifically asked for the pictures from behind of the baby being born so that she could see the baby being born. So I knew that I wanted to be back there, but then I also knew I want to be also in front when she pulls the baby up, because I want to be able to get that. So I had already planned that out in my mind, and I had already assessed the room and what was around her so that I could make sure things were away so that I could focus on her. So as he was being born, it was very, very quick. And I was able to snap those pictures very quick from behind and having him coming out. And then because I had already pre-planned it, I was able to run around very quickly and move things out of the way and start photographing from the front.
Leslie was like,
and birth is,
people.
yeah, it's funny because when you do that though, in your mind, it makes those things possible if you can pre-plan, you know, what your steps are going to be. But it was very quick. I mean, he came out very fast, but it was also slow enough to where we were able to capture him coming out and him on the ground and her kind of scooping him up and like the process of her pulling him up to her chest. And it was just a beautiful moment. And it was beautiful to be able to capture that undisturbed without everybody rushing in and wiping the baby off and suctioning the baby. And, you know, nobody was there. It was just her and her baby, and you could tell there was like a quiet around her, even though there were people talking and her husband was talking and her son was talking and wanting to touch the baby, and he was so excited. And there was actually a moment, it was so funny, when the baby was born and she was holding him out, and I have a photo of her holding him out, looking at the baby, just talking to him. And her son, who's 3, Wilder, was over, and he was like looking at him, and she was just focused totally on baby, and Wilder came and was like touching his head. And then he very quietly said, hi baby. And it was so sweet. And we were like, oh, that's so sweet. And then he just burst into tears and was so upset. And his dad was like, what is going on? Why are you upset? And Angelique, you were like, it's okay, buddy. You know, we're okay. And then we thought he was upset because something had scared him or something. But he said, the baby didn't say hi to me. And we all just started laughing. And we're like, the baby can't say hi to you yet. He loves you and he does know you're there, but he can't say it yet. But
it's an amazing story of a real birth.
Yeah.
That is a real birth, undisturbed, with all it has, with control and letting go, and the people around, and the innocence of that little brother. It's so beautiful. Thank you, really, thank you both for letting me use this beautiful picture on the book. I want to show it again. I'm in love with the picture. I'm in love with the story of this birth. I really feel that it reflects what the Laxmi method means, all the philosophy that is behind it. And I'm so proud of it. And I just want to say thanks for this interview. Thank you for letting me use your beautiful picture and for telling us the story. And I hope it will be an inspiration for many women who can learn now that birth is not that horrifying story that they have always told us. That is a magic moment that you can live with people you love, and that you can enjoy, that can be a spiritual experience too, that it is a moment of connection with all the strength, with all your power, with your baby, and it is just magical. So thank you very much. I think you are also, this kind of stories set a difference and set a reference for other women, so they can know that they can live their experiences in a very different way, and much nicer, and with a lot more of love and confidence. So thank you very much, really.
Yeah. Thank you.
I hope we can meet someday. I hope you will get the book soon. Maybe we will find it, and we will have it in English in the future if we sell a lot.
Yes, please, we'd love that.
And where do you live? Where can people find you if they want you to shoot in their birth?
We both live in Greenville, South Carolina.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep, we both live in Greenville, and we both. I mean, I can't speak for you, but we both travel within, or I travel within like a 2-hour radius of shooting. And then in special cases, I do travel outside of that. I do travel nationally, regionally to shoot births, but yeah.
Okay. And well, anyway, people can see your beautiful pictures, the work of both on Instagram. So
Mhm.
I will share your Instagram profiles in the description of the video, so anybody can find you. And thanks again.
Thank you so much. It was so good to meet you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.